Hey, welcome back to Fish on Northwest. We are here in the bait lab for this week's how-to. Everything you see in the bait lab is presented by Max Lure. Go to www.maxlure.com and find out all the fantastic fishing gear they have for you. And with that, we're going to talk about all this stuff here, all these components and some options you have when rigging up your gear for, this is ideally for Willapa, but it's applicable to Buoy 10, which is, opens up tomorrow. So both those fisheries will be going off here over the next several weeks. And of course, as I mentioned earlier in the show, if you are running bait, if you are dropping bait down and running inline rotators or even flashers, 11-inch flashers behind lead and spreader bars or slider bars, in Puget Sound, you're only fishing down 30, 40 feet with lead onto your slider. You can use this weed grabber and it's going to aid you in keeping your gear running more so than not. So what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about this little stick here that we affix on the main line, and this is right on your braid. We put that on there with a size number 3 barrel swivel, and that is typically, I run that a couple feet above my weight slider. Okay, this is that spreader bar in a sliding fashion by YBC. I got my dropper on there that the lead hooks to, and then we go to our jumper piece here, down to our inline flasher, Big Al's Fish Flash by YBC, and then of course our 5.5 foot leader to our mooching rig for our herring. Now, this looks like a lot of stuff to simply go out into the bay or to the ocean or out to Buoy 10 and catch salmon. It's really not that complicated, and we're going to show you how easy it is to rig all this up. So I have my main line here. Again, I'm fishing a 10.5 foot rod. You can get away with 9.5 foot, but I like these 10.5 foot rods rated at a 15 to 30. Some guys will run a 15 to 40. The key is the ounces of weight. You'll find them, they're rated anywhere from 4 to 16 ounces or 8 to 16 ounces. Some of them are rated 4 to 10 ounces. And for Willapa, you can get away with that because we're only going to run either 6 or 8 ounces at the most out there on most tides. We get into Buoy 10, we start running these 16 and 20 ounces, okay? So that takes a little bit bigger, beefier of a rod, but for the most part, in Willapa, we're gonna get by with these smaller leads. So, first thing I'm going to put on is my size 3 swivel, and that's just a simple in one eye, in the other eye, and that just lays on the line just like that, okay? Nothing too fancy about that. We'll put that stick through there later on as we get that completed. So that just slides up the line. And now I'm going to build all the gear in succession. So we have beads in line to protect the slider from going back and forth and beating against the swivels and parts of your components. So first, I want to put on an additional weed guard that I like to run in front of my slider. So I just simply put that little weed guard on. I like to put a bead in front of that or after that in front of the slider bar. And again, this is braid, and the end begins to get frayed, so you need to kind of wet that a little bit and just keep all the strands in tight. So we have our other weed guard and we have our bead that it rests against. Now I'm going to put on the slider bar or the spreader bar, which I like to rig them sliding because if your weight gets tied up in the net and the fish runs, if this is rigged to slide on your main line, it allows the fish to pull the main line through your spreader bar and it's not affixed so that it's going to actually break off. So, and remember on these, they're tapered, right? They go from big side to little side. And for me to remember, I always know that this is kind of like an arrow pointing, and the pointed end or the tip of the arrow points towards the bait. Okay, on my slider bar or my spreader bar, it always points towards the bait. So that's easy to rig. This backside up your main line towards the pole. And again, we'll take this braid through here. And there we go. Just simply slide that on. No big deal. Then I like to put a couple beads on there because next we're going to tie on our chain swivel. And so I need that to have something to slide against and not come in contact. This really is more so protecting the knot is what we're after here. So a couple beads on here, okay? So now we're just sliding all this up the main line, get it out of the way so that I have plenty of room here to tie my knot. Now, I'm just going to take my bead chain, and I got a dual lock on the end of there that we then hook our jumper sling to and or our YBC wire. I'll show you that in a little bit. So now we're just going to tie a simple clinch knot real fast here, hopefully. This goes without fail. A couple times through there. I'm going to wrap this 7 times. There's 3, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Bring this up through here and down through here. Just a simple quick knot right there. Slide that down. Pull it tight again. Don't use your teeth. It is braid. So we want to make sure we get that nice and secure. Okay, that is a good knot. That's not going anywhere. We're going to cut off a little excess. I like to leave just a little tail on there, just to ensure we got nothing to slip through. Okay, so now when all this slides down here, we have basically our spreader bar sliding with that weed stop in front of it, and that is going to hit against those beads, and that is protecting that knot on your bead chain. Now, one thing, the reason I like to use, bead chains and enough swivels within this whole entire thing, as you see us put this together, there's a swivel in every component. This stuff is spinning. You have an inline, the Big Alice Fish Flash from YBC that is rotating. You have herring that is spinning. All this stuff is spinning constantly, and you're on the troll. So the more ability you have for free spin and not getting balled up, the better off you're going to be. So now we talk about jumper sling distance between your spreader bar where your weight is connected, in between your inline rotating flasher. How much distance do I need? We also have a distance of weight hanging down here off our spreader bar that, again, it slides, right? The key here is to have distances that are not going to allow off of your main line going to your rotator and your weight to swing up and get wrapped up into your spreader distance between your weight and your rotator. I typically have always made these heavy gauge lines 16-inch and 20-inch or 21-inch, okay? So this is 200-pound monofilament crimped onto barrel swivels with dual locks, and I make them specifically for its purpose in each position of function. So the distance between the main line and where the slider, your spreader bar, connects to, the distance between there and my inline rotator is roughly 20 inches, okay? So everything is modular, just all clips on. All right, so now looking at this, okay, if I can get all this squared away, I have 20 inches in between that. Now, on my spreader bar, I clip my 16-inch dropper, and I'm gonna run that off of this corner one here, okay? So that 16-inch dropper then goes to a barrel swivel, and I run this small dual lock on here, and it's never really been a problem, but if in fact you were to get hung up, I have to have a fail point somewhere in here. I'm running 65 pound braid. I have this heavy gauge monofilament just to prevent, line twist, because it's much stiffer than just running like a 15-pound dropper. I have that 200-pound jumper going from the end of my main line to my fish flash. And all that's for a reason. It really aids in not allowing stuff to get spun up. So I put this small dual lock on the end of this where I will clip on my, for Willapa, 6 or 8 ounce lead. And if in fact that was to get hung up on something, the weakest point in this entire thing is that small dual lock on the end of that. And that is going to really allow that to break away. And it does. It's, I've bent a few of them out over the years. Very seldom do they get hung up because a lot of the areas you're fishing are more of sand and mud flats, but it can happen. If that does get hooked or hung up, you do want a fail point or a break point at some point. So that's why I put that on there. Then off of your fish flash, you're going to hook your, just basically hook on your 5 or 6 foot mooching rig, okay, your leader. So that's basically all that gear in order in how it runs. Now, what's the key to that barrel swivel up at the top here that freely slides up and down the line? Well, I take these shish kebab basic sticks, these little bamboo sticks. You get them in any store, buy them in packets of like 50, very economical. You cut those into about 2.5 to 3 inch sections, okay? So basically take these sticks and we're cutting those into 2.5 to 3 inch pieces. And now at the top of this swivel, this barrel swivel, you just lay the line down there and we're just gonna run this stick on through here, okay? And we're gonna put it through to about a midway point. And then that's all it is. And because you're running on braid, it doesn't really tear the braid up. It doesn't pinch it. If you were to run this on mono, it would crimp or pinch against your mono. That could be problematic. But on the braid, it just slides through there and it just rides right there. Now this does slide up and down. If you're bringing a fish in and you butt this up against the tip of your rod and you crank down, it will just basically bump this down to where it'll come all the way down and stop against your spreader bar. No big deal. Typically, I like to run them a couple, 2-3 feet out in front of my spreader bar. So this is going through the water, and believe it or not, that little stick out in front of all this gear back here spinning will grab all that eelgrass and that angel hair and all those different types of weeds and grass. It just loads up on that stick, and the more that loads up, the bigger the ball of weeds gets in front of it, and it keeps building. You'll notice it on your rod as it's in the rod holder and you're on your troll. The rod starts loading up and you can see it starting to get some bend to it. No big deal. You crank it in, you grab all the weeds off of that stick, throw them in the water, and you look at your spreader bar, your rotating fish flash, your herring on your leader or your spinner, and they are 90% weed free. And that's the beauty of it, is that even though the weeds were building up on this stick grabber, the weed grabber, the gear is still spinning and rotating and you're still fishing, okay? And that's the key, is that you're still fishing. The other thing is, when you bring all this gear in, you don't have a bunch of weeds all over your flasher. You don't have a bunch of weeds all over your herring. And we all know when you start pulling those weeds and eelgrass and stuff off of that herring, oftentimes you start tearing your herring apart. Then you got to replace your bait, so you're more time out of the water and you're wasting time. If you're in Willapa running 3 or 4 rods, it literally is going from one rod to the next rod to the next rod. You reel it in, you clear the weeds off of your weed grabber, you put your gear back out. You go to the next one, you clear the weeds off your weed grabber, you put the gear back out. You're not having to change bait as often. The gear continues to fish even though there's weeds building up on that grabber, and you're going to have more time in the water. It's going to be much more successful. So just some tips and how we rig all this out. If you want, YBC, as Big Jared was in here a few weeks ago, they do have these wires, and they have a 15-inch and a 10-inch, okay? The 15-inch and the 10-inch. You can utilize these in place of building your jumper and your dropper with 150 or 200 pound mono. You can use these wires, which I'm going to definitely use some of these down at Buoy 10 this next week. I'm going to use this as my spreader. I'm going to use the 10-inch as my dropper. Again, it just helps prevent any line twists and all your gear twisting up. And it's a great idea by YBC, and if you haven't picked any of those up, I suggest you do, because it's a no-brainer for me. I've gone to extremely stiff monofilament to prevent line twists, and this is just about as far from line twist as you can get by using straight wire. It's flexible, does bend a little, and but it's durable and strong. It's stainless, it won't rust. It's going to do the job. It's going to do it very well. So again, just kind of a rigging point. Put that little skewer stick, couple 3 inches, 2.5, 3 inches wide in that size 3 barrel swivel, couple 3 feet up your line, main line in front of your whatever type of sliding device you choose to use for your rig, and it's going to grab weeds for you all day long, and it's going to give you a lot less headaches.